All right, hello and welcome to today's video or training. As you can see from the title, what we're going to be covering is productivity is a nervous system problem. And as you can see from the overview, what we're going to be talking about more specifically is first the overview itself, the energy behind action, the safety switch, the bottleneck that kills momentum, the illusion of willpower, the review, and your action items for the day or the next few days. So without further ado, let's get started and talk about the energy behind action. So everyone talks about productivity like it's some kind of a software problem. Like if you just find the right app or the perfect planner or the newest 3-step system, you'll suddenly become this focused, consistent, high-performing machine. But the truth is way deeper than that and way more physical. You don't act because you write things down. You act because your body has enough energy, clarity, and stability to actually move. If you want to test this out, this statement, just drink alcohol for one whole night and then wake up with 3 or 4 hours of sleep and try to be productive. Productivity isn't a mindset problem. It's not about motivation. It's not about tools. It's not even about time. It's about nervous system regulation. If your body is dysregulated, if your internal state is locked in survival mode, then it doesn't matter how smart or strategic or driven you are, you won't move. You'll stall, avoid, or spin out. Action is a function of state, not will. And if you've been stuck, inconsistent, or self-sabotaging, chances are your system doesn't feel safe enough to move forward because your nervous system is firing the wrong signal. So your nervous system is not neutral. It's either preparing you for movement or freezing you into stillness. And the human nervous system has one job: to keep you alive. That means scanning for threat, controlling energy expenditure, and filtering your entire experience of the world based on what feels safe or dangerous. When your system perceives safety, you get access to calm focus, flow, creativity, and confident execution. When it perceives danger, even subconsciously, you get anxiety, avoidance, indecision, and emotional shutdown. Most people are trying to be productive while running on a nervous system that's still living in fight, flight, or freeze. They're trying to sprint while dragging chains. And you stare at your to-do list but feel paralyzed. You know what to do, but keep delaying it. You commit to habits and break them within 72 hours. That's not laziness. That's a biological response to perceived threat. So execution burns energy, and the quality of that energy determines everything. Think of action like combustion. It requires fuel, oxygen, and ignition. Your nervous system is the mechanism that regulates all three. When the system is regulated, energy flows cleanly and predictably, and you move with power. When it's dysregulated, you either overreact, underperform, or burn out fast. There's no clean channel. So you can't outschedule bad energy. You can't plan your way out of a stressed out state. So you build complicated routines, and when they collapse, you blame yourself. But the system was never the problem. It was the state underneath. You try to push forward, but your body is saying no. On paper, the task is clear. Write the offer, send the message, record the video. It should take 20 minutes. Instead of doing it, you scroll, snack, second guess, or reorganize your workspace. You feel guilty for not starting, but guilt doesn't regulate the system. It actually tightens it even more. So you stay stuck, not because you don't care, but because your nervous system sees movement as risk, and it shuts you down before you can even begin. This is where polyvagal theory flips the game. Polyvagal theory breaks down how the autonomic nervous system switches between 3 states: dorsal vagal, which is freeze, shutdown, hopelessness, collapse; sympathetic, which is fight or flight, anxiety, urgency, hyperdrive; or ventral vagal, which is regulated, connection, focus, calm execution. Most people try to build success while stuck in either dorsal or sympathetic. They're either too shut down to act or too hyped up to focus. And in both states, their nervous system is prioritizing protection over performance. Real productivity doesn't happen from panic or shutdown. It happens from regulation. This is why most productivity systems fail. They're built on the assumption that your body is regulated and ready, but if you're anxious, depleted, or locked in survival mode, those systems won't stick. You'll start strong, but crash when your system hits resistance, and you'll think, I just need more discipline, when really you needed nervous system support. The first fix is internal. Not a new planner, not a better strategy, a different physiological state. You can't execute while your body is running a defense protocol. When you're regulated, you gain access to your executive function. Planning, creative thinking, long-term vision. This is the state where you build, create, move, ship. You're present, you're confident, you're clear. And most importantly, it doesn't cost you everything. You're not pushing through. You're just flowing forward. When dysregulated, you don't have access to that system. You're trying to think long-term while your body is screaming, survive. And that instinct will always override logic, no matter how much you want it. And this is the first shift. Stop trying to force action from a system that's not ready. Your stuckness isn't a character flaw, it's a regulation issue. And when you learn how to stabilize your system first, execution becomes automatic. Not because you're motivated, but because your body finally feels safe enough to move. But what exactly is stopping that safety from kicking in? What's the switch that gets flipped in your biology that shuts everything down the second you try to act? The answer lives deep in your spine, and it's running the show whether you like it or not. So let's talk about the safety switch. So your body will never let you execute on something that feels unsafe. Not unsafe logically, unsafe physiologically. You could have the best plan, the clearest priorities, the strongest intention in the world, but if your nervous system detects threat, even just a trace, it will override your to-do list and throw your body into defense every single time. The gatekeeper of this entire process is your autonomic nervous system. It doesn't ask for your permission. It doesn't wait for your conscious mind. It makes the call in milliseconds. Regulate or protect. Move forward or shut down. Most people have no idea they're running their lives under the influence of a primitive defense mechanism located in their vagus nerve. It's a built-in safety switch, and when it's flipped, your system changes completely, from open and focused to guarded and reactive. So the vagus nerve runs from your brainstem all the way down through your chest and into your gut. It's your body's surveillance system. It listens constantly to everything. Your breathing, your facial tension, the posture you're holding, the speed of your heart, and based on all of that, it decides safe or unsafe. If your breathing is shallow, if your posture is slouched, if your heart rate is elevated, the vagus nerve interprets that as a potential threat. And it sends signals to downshift your entire system, numbing you out, fogging your mind, and putting the brakes on execution. People try to think their way out of this. They try to force focus, push themselves into performance, but you can't outthink your vagus nerve. You have to regulate it. What feels unsafe to the nervous system isn't always obvious. The threat doesn't have to be physical. It can be emotional, social, relational. It can even be imagined. Sending a cold DM can trigger a freeze response if your system equates rejection with humiliation. Recording a video can spike anxiety if your body links visibility with danger. Raising your prices can feel like a survival risk if your history is wired for under-earning. The moment something carries the energy of threat, your system responds like it's life or death, even if the threat is just a client call. Now, most of this happens way before thought. The interpretation isn't verbal, it's felt. And by the time your conscious mind catches up, the shutdown is already in progress. When the safety switch flips, your entire operating system changes. You might feel heavy, foggy, tired, like your limbs are filled with cement. You call it laziness, but it's not. It's your nervous system hitting the brakes. That's dorsal vagal shutdown, the most primal response to overwhelm. It says, we can't escape, so we'll just stop. And ironically, the less you move, the safer your body feels, even if the consequences are long-term failure. Or maybe you ramp up. You overanalyze, you obsess, you overthink, you become hypercritical. Try to solve the problem with intensity instead of clarity. That's sympathetic activation. The system's in overdrive. It's trying to outrun the danger. You might get stuff done this way, but it's unstable, unsustainable, and your body pays for it later. You're trying to operate like a machine while your body is wired like an animal. You don't have a productivity problem. You have a safety problem. When your system feels safe, you gain access to your higher functions: focus, creativity, resourcefulness, planning, execution. When it feels unsafe, you lose all of that. Not because you're weak, because your biology doesn't trust your environment. So the question isn't, how do I get myself to do this? It's, what about this feels unsafe to the part of me that's still trying to protect me? Here's the part no one talks about. Safety isn't some vague feeling. It's physical. You can feel it in your breath, your jaw, your gut, your heartbeat. When your system is regulated, you're grounded. When it's not, you're floating, buzzing, bracing, tight chest, shallow breath, clenched hands, darting thoughts. All of it is feedback from the switch. Ignore those signals long enough and your whole life starts to feel stuck, stalled, and out of sync. The solution isn't motivation. It's regulation rituals. Simple patterns that tell the vagus nerve, we're safe. We can move now. Breath work, cold exposure, singing, humming, shaking, posture correction, deep eye contact, slow exhale, meditation, trampoline jumping, which Tony Robbins famously does. You regulate first, then execute, not the other way around. What I do specifically before every one of those videos is meditate and use breath work, as well as do some quick light exercise. And it always helps. You regulate first, and then you execute, not the other way around. At first, this sounds like it's overkill, like it's too soft, too somatic, not grind enough. But trying to grind while dysregulated is like trying to drive with the parking brake on. You burn fuel, you destroy the vehicle, and you don't go anywhere. The top performers you admire, from athletes to business owners, they don't push harder. They recover faster. Their edge is nervous system flexibility, not endless brute force. The moment you realize your system is trying to protect you, everything changes. You stop asking, why am I broken? And start asking, what safety cue is missing right now? That one shift lets you take your foot off your own neck. And from there, you can start re-engineering your environment, your habits, and your workflow to serve your physiology instead of fighting it. Because once safety is restored, action stops being an uphill battle and starts becoming a default setting. But just because you're regulated doesn't mean you're moving efficiently. There's one more layer underneath it all, a deeper structural flaw that chokes momentum at the molecular level, a biological bottleneck that kills progress before it compounds. That's what we tackle next. So let's talk about the bottleneck that kills momentum. So there's something nobody tells you when it comes to execution. It's not enough to want to move. It's not enough to feel ready. Even once your nervous system is calm and you're clear on what needs to happen, there's one more piece that determines whether you build real momentum or fall back into that start-stop cycle that keeps you stuck. That piece is your bottleneck, the single point in your internal system that controls the speed and power of everything else. In chemistry and systems theory, it's called the rate limiting step. Every chain of events has one component that moves slower than the rest. And no matter how powerful the system is overall, that one slow point determines the speed of the whole process. In your life, the rate limiting step is the action you avoid most consistently, the thing that feels smallest on paper but slows down everything else when left undone. And if you don't identify and eliminate that bottleneck, you'll never build compound momentum, because your progress will always be gated by that single point of friction. Bottlenecks are tricky. They're rarely obvious and they almost never feel like the biggest problem. It's not always the hardest task, actually. It's the one that quietly delays the rest. You tell yourself you're behind because you haven't built your funnel, but the real bottleneck is that you've avoided writing the headline for 3 weeks because it makes you feel exposed. You overbuild the parts you enjoy and ignore the one move that unblocks everything else. Bottlenecks wear disguises. They look like procrastination, waiting on inspiration, or just not being in the mood. But if you trace the delay, it always leads back to one high resistance task that makes your body tighten. The thing you're avoiding is the thing that's slowing down the entire system. Most people don't fail from lack of skill. They fail from constant breaks in continuity. Momentum is a chemical process. It builds when one action flows smoothly into the next. When initiation energy is sustained long enough to create compounding outcomes. You start small, the energy builds, you keep moving, the compound effect kicks in. That's how big shifts happen fast. But every time you hesitate, pause, or delay, especially on your bottleneck, you interrupt the chain reaction and the momentum dies. So you find yourself constantly resetting, remotivating, restarting, not because you're inconsistent, but because your bottleneck keeps resetting the cycle before it can mature. The reason your bottleneck sticks is almost never tactical. It's emotional. You've unconsciously paired that action with discomfort, risk, shame, or rejection, so your nervous system quietly tags it as dangerous and your body finds subtle ways to resist. You clean your desk, you change fonts, you build 10 different versions of the same asset, hoping one of them feels right. You tell yourself it's not the right time. You wait for inspiration, but underneath all of it is just fear of friction. And until you rewire the way your body responds to that one move, every attempt at consistency will collapse at the same point. Different context, same wall. So how do you find your rate limiting step? It's simpler than you think. Ask yourself this: if I had to do one thing today that would make every other task easier or irrelevant, what am I avoiding right now that fits that description? Usually, the answer comes fast and feels like something you'd rather ignore. That discomfort, that's the signal. That's the thing. You can also look at your last 5 projects, routines, or sprints and ask, where did I always slow down? What step did I always delay? What decision or action always took longer than it should have? If the same task causes friction every time, it's not just tactical, it's systemic. And once you see it, you can finally start to dismantle it instead of dancing around it. So you don't overcome bottlenecks by pushing harder. You do it by designing a ritual around them. Instead of trying to get motivated, you make the bottleneck your first task every single day, no matter what. If cold outreach is your blocker, your day doesn't start until the first 5 DMs are sent. If scripting is the wall, then your morning begins with writing the first paragraph, no matter how bad it is. The action stops being terrifying. It becomes part of your rhythm. Your body learns that it's safe, and the resistance drops. Over time, the emotional tag gets replaced with a neutral one, or even a positive one. And as that friction disappears, the whole system starts to move faster, cleaner, and with less emotional cost. Every bottleneck you ignore compounds against you. Every bottleneck you fix compounds in your favor. Momentum isn't about intensity. It's about removing drag from the system. So if you want to become unstoppable, stop adding more. Strip away the choke point, the thing that kills speed, the thing that delays decisions, the thing that you keep saying you'll get to later. That's the lever. Most people think they need to overhaul their life to make big changes. They don't. They just need to find the single point of failure that keeps stalling the engine and fix it before it resets the loop again. Small hinges swing big doors, and in your system, that one moment of friction is the hinge that holds back everything else. Once it's gone, things feel easier, not because life changed, but because resistance vanished. And what used to feel like a climb starts to feel like acceleration. But even after the bottleneck is removed, even once your system starts flowing again, there's one lie that still sabotages high performers the most. One cultural myth that makes you feel broken even when you're already making progress. And it's time we destroy it next. Let's talk about the illusion of willpower. So one of the biggest lies you've been fed is that the key to productivity is willpower. That if you could just get more disciplined, more focused, more mentally tough, you'd finally do what you say you're going to do. But here's the truth. Most people don't want to admit willpower is unreliable. It's inconsistent and biologically expensive. It's not a strategy, it's an emergency override, and if you build your life on it, you'll burn out before you break through. And if you're like me, you were probably raised to believe that willpower is the difference between people that are successful and people that are not. That's not it. People treat willpower like it's a muscle, like something you can build and grow, but it's not designed for that. It's more like a fire extinguisher. It works in short bursts, in specific situations, and the more you rely on it, the faster it runs out. Sustainable execution never comes from force, it comes from alignment. When your environment is clean, your nervous system is regulated, and your actions are structured properly. You don't need willpower, you just move. Willpower drains fast because it burns glucose. Literally, it's an energy-intensive cognitive function. Every time you resist an impulse, make a decision, or override discomfort, your brain pulls from a limited pool of resources. And once that pool is low, your decision-making quality drops. Your focus crumbles, and your internal resistance spikes. That's why it's easier to eat clean in the morning and binge at night. It's why you plan your day at 8 a.m. with military clarity and then break down by 4 p.m. watching TikTok on the couch. Your nervous system is tired, your frontal lobe is fatigued, and your capacity to push through has dropped below usable levels. So if your entire productivity strategy is just try harder, then you're setting yourself up for guaranteed inconsistency. The culture worships willpower because it looks heroic. We glorify the guy who wakes up at 4 a.m. to train in the rain, the founder who works 18 hours a day, the girl who grinds through exhaustion. That kind of behavior feels impressive because it's extreme, but we confuse extreme for effective, and that's a dangerous game. Most of the people you think are disciplined aren't running on willpower at all. They've just built systems and conditions that support action without resistance. Their triggers are controlled, their rituals are stable, their feedback loops are clean. So it looks like discipline from the outside, or willpower, but on the inside, it's just smart system design. Relying on willpower creates a boom-bust cycle that destroys trust in yourself. You get a surge of motivation, you go hard for a few days, and then you crash. You ghost your own plan, you break your own streak, you avoid the thing you said mattered most. Then the guilt kicks in and you feel like you betrayed yourself. So you double down, you try again, with more pressure this time. This time I'll really commit. But it's the same flawed strategy, and it fails again. I know, because I applied the same thing. Over time, your nervous system starts to associate effort with pain, and every new attempt gets harder, not because you're weaker, but because your body remembers the collapse. People who execute consistently almost never feel like they're trying that hard, because they've built rituals that reduce decision-making, systems that guide their energy, and identities that support the behavior without resistance. The person who trains daily doesn't fight the urge to skip, they just train. It's part of them, it's embedded. The founder who writes every morning isn't hyping himself up to do it. He just knows that's how his day starts. When things feel hard every time, it's not because they're inherently hard. It's because you haven't yet removed the manual override dependency. You're still trying to push when you should be designing. Instead of willpower, build your life around leverage. Use identity, structure, and emotional alignment to make the right action the easiest one. When you see yourself as someone who just does the work, there's no negotiation. When the action is built into your environment and your calendar, you don't have to summon energy, you just show up. When the task is connected to a deep why, your nervous system stops resisting it, it starts supporting it. You don't need to fight yourself if the battlefield is already designed in your favor. Now, some part of you probably still believes that struggle is proof of growth, that ease is cheating, that simplicity is weak. But what if that's just trauma-coded ambition? What if that belief is the very thinking making everything harder than it needs to be? You're not growing because you're grinding. You're growing because you're evolving the system that used to require grinding. True power is when effort feels like flow, when forward motion feels like your natural rhythm, not a fight. Look at any elite performer in any field and what you'll find isn't just hustle, it's pattern. They do the same high-value behaviors every single day with very little drama. Their actions are predictable, their resistance is low, their adjustments are quiet and fast. They win not because they pushed harder, but because they didn't have to. So stop worshiping willpower. Stop trying to be the strongest struggler in the room. Instead, become the person who moves cleanly, consistently, and without friction. Not because they're superhuman, but because they no longer need to be. And if you want to actually live like that, if you want to stop pretending you need more discipline and actually build the system that sets you free, then you need to be surrounded by people who operate at that level. People who speak this language. People who think this way. Soon, we'll talk about where to find them. With that being said, let's talk about the review. We covered the overview, we covered the energy behind action, the safety switch, the bottleneck that kills momentum, the illusion of willpower, the review, and finally, your action items for the day or the next few days. Start your day with a simple, repeatable nervous system cue that tells your body it's safe to execute. No skipping, no stacking, just one consistent signal that anchors you in control. Identify the single task that slows down everything else in your workflow. Make that action non-negotiable and attack it first every day until it no longer carries resistance. Finally, stop relying on willpower and start designing conditions. Build rituals, environments, and identities that make productivity automatic so action flows without internal negotiation. With that being said, I hope this brought a lot of value. If it did, make sure to hit that subscribe button, make sure to hit the like button, and I'll see you in the next one.